Hi and welcome to this month's episode of the Process Diary, this work in progress video for July. The first of two actually for this month. In this tutorial, we'll be looking at adding the eye, finishing off the mouth, the interior of the mouth, and attaching the head to the rest of the body mesh. So now let's focus on the eye. We'll come back to the ear and modify that when we're going to do a sort of an overall kind of a cleanup. But for now, we'll jump into front view over here, go into edit mode by hitting tab, and I'm going to select the two vertices on the corners of the eye, hold down Shift S, and snap my cursor to selection. This will put the cursor equidistant from these 2 points. Notice in the side view, it'll also put the cursor sort of roughly where I want that eyeball to be. Going out of edit mode now into object mode, I'm going to hit my space key and I'm going to add a UV sphere, giving it a segment of 8, rings 8, and a radius of let's say 0.2 in front view. So therefore the pole will be facing us. You can see in side view how that works there. Now 0.2 is about the size that we want, but if I tab out of object mode, you can see how it intersects with the mesh around the face. So in side view here, I'm going to grab that and move that back while watching it in front view. That's pretty good, but what will further help us in positioning this eye is to add a subsurf modifier to it. I'm going to dial that up to 2 and set it to smooth. You can see now that we've got these gaps on either side of the eye. So what I can do is I can scale this up somewhat until we eliminate those, and then just push that back in the head a little bit. Now, to truly see how these spaces are working, we can see that in front view there's no space, or in side view there's little space up here, but it's not until we go into perspective mode, so I'm going to hit my numpad 5 and rotate around, that you'll see that there's practically a space right around the eyeball, and if we move that 2 forward, it'll intersect in part of the mesh, but that's sort of not a good way to sort of close up that that gap. What we do is we select the head mesh. I'm going to tab into edit mode. I'm going to hit Control Tab, and I'm going to change my selection mode to edges. Going to select one of these edges around the eye. Control E brings up my edge specials menu, and I'm going to select edge loop select. That will select all the edges around there. Then in side view, what we'll see here is if I hit E to extrude, I can extrude out in the Y direction by constraining my movement to Y. And I'm going to scale this in a little bit, maybe even scale it a little bit in the Y direction. So what we've effectively done, if we go into our perspective mode, is closed that gap around the eye. Now what I might do is I might select all of these edges, and I'm just going to add a bit of a crease to them, so that when I tab out, I should be able to sort of see where I should place my eyelids. It's very subtle right now, so I might go ahead and increase that a lot more, maybe to 0.8 or something, and see if that takes any effect. Yeah, I'll be able to tell, and that's where I'm going to place my eyelids at a later stage. But for now, that eye is now well and truly on its way to being part of this head. I can, if I want, select that eye, shift select the head, hit Control J, join selected meshes, and if you look at the front view for a second, bang, now we've got two eyes equally spaced, because that mesh now inherits the modifiers of the mesh that you're joining it to, as well as any materials that it might have. Now we're going to focus on the inside of the mouth. Now, there's a couple of tricks I like to use when it comes to the modifiers, which I'll show you right now. And that is these 3 buttons next to the actual modifier. Let's take a look at the mirror modifier. So I'll just put away the subsurf for now and open up the mirror so we can see our settings more clearly. What these 3 buttons mean is when they're depressed, they enable that modifier, at each of these points in your process. So, for instance, this little icon that we see in our editing panel means that if it's not touched, whenever we go into edit mode, as we can do now, it will not show up. Likewise in just working with it as well as rendering. I'm going to unenable it in edit mode, but I'm going to leave it to show up in interactive and object mode. So going into edit mode here, I'm going to go into my side view over here, and let's zoom up on this mouth over here. Let's go over here now too. I'm going to begin by shaping down these lips, and I might have to go into vertex select mode for this. But, the kind of lips that I'm wanting to produce are sort of nice and flat, so that we can actually, what I might do, I might select all of these vertices here, scale in the Z direction, and then rotate out so we can sort of see them a little bit. But then take these inside ones and scale them. Maybe grab those and move them in a little bit. So we've got a sort of a plane there where the lips enter the mouth. I'm going to take that corner of the mouth and move that in a little bit so we can get a nicer fold. I might do the same with these vertices here. Rotate them out over here. And just move those vertices in around here. You can already see how shaping these lips can be a bit of a task, and this is where a lot of your time will be consumed when you're modeling. It's always in the refining process, and I'm going to show you in a little bit, especially when we're moving onto the ear, how that refining can be sped up a little bit. For now, they're looking quite nice. Now, there is a reason why I turned off the modifier for mirror in edit mode, and that is that I'm going to be modeling the inside of a mouth. To have this mirror modifier off and to say go into side view and hit Control numpad 3, it will give you the inside look of the mesh, so we can already see what it looks like from the inside. If I had the modifier on, we would have to be looking through the X-ray. It makes it just a little bit more difficult to work with. I'm going to do one more thing to make my life a little bit easier. I'm going to go into vertex mode here, out of shaded mode, and I'm going to select all these vertices around the mouth. I might deselect these ones here because they're not quite that necessary. Select swap and hide these vertices. So now not only do I have only half the mesh to work on, I also don't have all those other vertices to interfere, but I can still sort of see the shape of the head. Blender sort of draws this nice X-ray there to make editing a lot easier. So I can now go into maybe shaded view over here. I can go into edge select mode, again, Control Tab, edge select mode, select one edge, Control E, edge loop select, and I'm going to hit extrude, and I'm going to extrude in the Y direction. I'm going to scale up in the Z a little bit, and go back into vertice mode to move these vertexes into place. So this lip, because it's sort of a cartoon kind of a lip, doesn't really need to follow the contours of a physical mouth exactly. But we know that this thing should begin to cause some sort of a folding around these lips, so that when the character opens his mouth, we can sort of see where the lips are defined and where the teeth start and all of that sort of stuff. Now we've got to make sure that these bottom lip vertices don't intersect with the chin or under the lip So we can always maybe move those a little bit away to give us a bit more leeway if we wanted. Maybe even thicken these up a little bit. We can always add a bit more detail by adding extra rings here, but I won't do that just yet. Going back into edge mode, I'm going to edge select those inside ones and extrude in the Y direction, and already you can begin to see the shape of the mouth. I'm going to scale this in the Y direction a little bit as well. Maybe move these out a little bit to the X. Extrude again in the Y to make a bigger one, and sort of scale that down. The mouth is basically a sack, and basically what we can now do is close off those. I might throw in, I might knife, make sure the percentage is 0 there, so that I can create a quad over here to close off the mouth there, and keep an edge loop consistent. Now, coming out of edit mode, it doesn't look too different, but what the great thing is now is that when it renders, if I say put a mouth color or something like that in, then that's closed off, and we'll never really see what's behind the mesh, so to speak, when we're doing our renders. One final thing I'm going to do before I end this, and I'm going to reveal the rest of the vertices here and maybe even turn on the other side so I can see what happens when I do this, is that I'm going to select this edge loop, and maybe even this edge loop select. It will select both those edge loops, and I'm going to bump up the crease to maybe a 6, because what this is going to do is give me a really nice defined lip region, so we know where the lips end and the beginning of the mouth, well, the mouth begins. So the last thing we're going to do before we get onto the whole refining process of this model is attach the head to the body. I thought I might do this in this tutorial because the refining, like fixing up the ears, adding the teeth and the hair and all that sort of stuff, kind of constitutes something that we have to do to both the body and the head. So I'm going to shift select the body layer, and already we can see that it's not looking just right just yet. If we take a look at the body, and we take a look at the number of vertices around the neck, you can see that they number 1, 2, 3, 4 as shown up here in the vertex counter. So if we deleted those, we can look at the next ring out, which would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? But we can add a little bit of information to make these go up to 11. Boy, that sounded a little bit like this is Spinal Tap, to tell you the truth. So I'm going to add those 2 vertices to the chest there. And to get our 11th point, we're going to have to put a loop here, but we're going to have to make it terminate at the hand. And this is going to be a little bit tricky because it's going to want to go down the middle of the finger and then around, which isn't that great after all. So we may have to detach the arm for now. We're going to hit P, separate selected, and now this will become a separate mesh. And this way we can add in our, where are we? Here we are, our extra loop here that we need. And there we've got our 11 vertices. So the next thing we're going to do is, I'm going to do this in reverse. I'm going to select the body, then shift select the head, Control J, join selected meshes, so that the body takes on the modifiers of the head. Now let's hopefully, yep, no, it did have a mirror modifier, as well as its subsurf properties, which has going to scale those back to level 2. And I'm going to set everything to smooth. So it's beginning to look right. So all that's left now is to attach that head to this body. And the quick way of doing this, because the numbers of vertices correspond, is to select any edge over here and any edge over here. Control E, edge loop select, then hit the F key and go skin face edge loops. And voila, they are all skinned. It looks a little bit wonky right now, but that is where our work is now going to take us. If we go into, say, vertex mode, I'm going to enable connected on proportional edits. If you're wondering where this is, if you look at any of your taskbars and you see this little donut shape next to the word global, click on it and that will enable our proportional editor. And this is what this does. If we hit connect and we grab a vertice and we hit the G key, you'll see this ring appear around this cross or around that vertice. And I'm using my middle mouse button, I can increase or decrease the influence that this vertice will now have when I grab it and move it. I'm going to grab a couple of vertices so you can see this in more detail. And you'll see that there's a proportional fall off in how the vertices act. So I'm going to increase this a little bit. So if I grab this, one vertice, you can see that it moves a whole heap of them all at the same time. I'm going to move into the front view for this, so I can grab this shoulder. And we can begin to... Okay, that's a little bit too much because it's affecting the chin. But very slowly, and I do mean slowly, we can begin to edit this, the surrounding vertices of this mesh so that we get a more consistent flow in the look of them. But I will leave it here for now, where he's looking slightly Shrekish, but not too shabby. In the following tutorial, we're going to reattach those hands and begin to sculpt our character. We're going to add things like detail for pants and braces and gloves and boots and all that sort of wonderful stuff. And hopefully in the next one, maybe two more tutorials, we will have a finished character ready for toon shading and insertion into the webcomic.